Well, welcome to Global Travel Media, Craig Bowen, and it's a great pleasure to have you join us here on Global Travel Media. And you're co-founder and managing director of Cruise Traveller, which is described as Australia's most experienced small cruise ship specialist. And that's the boom in cruising at the moment. It's small cruise ships. 15 years you and your team have been creating these experiences for Australians to go all over the world. You've got 38 years experience in the tourism, travel and hospitality industry yourself. I'm going to embarrass you by putting on the screen now all the places in the world that you visited, which is quite an incredible list. So you're obviously passionate about what you do. The cruise lines you've sailed on, so you're obviously an expert in there. And then also the companies that you currently represent. So if anybody's looking for a specialist in small ship, boutique, luxury cruising, it's got to be you. But the latest partner you have, and I'm told that you are very, very excited by this, which is really great news, is Tradewind Voyages, based in the UK, with her amazing ship parked right behind you there. It's amazing that you got her there to Mermaid Beach in the Queensland, okay? And the Golden Horizon. So tell me all about the Golden Horizon.
Oh, look, John, thanks very much for the welcome. Yes, it's been a great journey with Cruise Traveller right from the early days right through. And in fact, when you noted there the places I've been and the ships that I've had the pleasure of sailing on, it's also really exciting for me to know that all of my team have shared this journey with us as well. And we every single year, obviously last year was a bit of a tough one, but generally as our business has grown, it's not just myself doing the travelling. All of our team get to experience these products so that they're absolute experts in the field. People, we need to be able to add value to more than a website and things these days. So to make sure that we've all had a part of that, it's been a really exciting part of our growth to have a team with so much experience. And so when we get to a product like this, I mean, one of my great roles in the company has actually been to procure new products. And, we've gone from representing 2 products back in 2003 to I think it's 55 or 56 now. And Tradewind has been the newest addition to that. And the timing's fantastic. Here we've got an amazing, exciting product. I mean, in some ways very historic in that it was, the Golden Horizon was modeled after a 1913 ship called France 2. But on board she's all latest technology. So it's got all the history and the romance, but all the great technology. And that isn't just in terms of the sailing technology, but also the guest comforts and creature comforts on board. So, to be able to add her to our portfolio at this point is fantastic.
So what's the sort of philosophy? I mean, I know she's 5 masts, she's a square rigger, as I think you said before, largest sailing ship ever built. She's currently the largest square rigger in the world at the moment, but modern technology. So people say, oh my goodness, is she sailing all the time? Well, yeah, about 70% of the time, but she's got state-of-the-art engines and technology and so on. But in terms of the philosophy that the guests will experience on board, what do you think is different about this to other companies and other ships?
Sure, thanks, John. Look, the sailing concept is different in itself in that, look, there's some other wonderful sailing products that we also sell around the globe that have a similar looking product. And I've experienced most of them. And the big difference is that they fundamentally have sails for atmosphere and effect. And basically day to day, they're under motor. You touched on a very important point. The Golden Horizon's goal is to sail for 70% of the time on average. Now, I've already had a couple of, really gung-ho sailors get on the phone and say, that's impossible, on this particular sector and whatever. But what we're trying to say here is year round on average, the ship is going to be under sail propulsion, and that means that her state-of-the-art engines are there to make sure that if the weather isn't favourable, that she'll still be able to stick to an itinerary, which is very important because that's all part of the plan. But I think that desire to sail 70% of the time is the underlying company philosophy, and to do things differently, to do them environmentally, friendly. And so it's not just the sail propulsion that's environmentally attractive, it's also all of the systems on board, all of the way they manage every part of the business. Even the way they're operating their offices in the UK has been just a really great experience for me to be a part of. So it's a holistic approach to an environmentally sensitive product. And the other thing that I think is really different is the way that they're structuring their itineraries around that whole trade wind and prevailing currents type of scenario, where the itineraries are lending themselves to stopping at remote and exotic ports, not just capital cities. Sure, the big capital cities tend to be used more for the turnaround ports because of airlift, getting people in and out of them. But when you analyse some of the itineraries and look at where they stop, I mean, this is a really hands-on, experiential type of product. The sailing, only one exciting part of it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's quite amazing, really. And in terms of, at the moment, I know that, we are in difficult times at the moment. So they've cancelled some of the UK programs at the moment. They're not going to be operating until June, I think, currently. But they're absolutely passionate and committed to the maritime voyage. Okay, that's maritime, I can't remember what they call it now. But that's the one leaving from Europe, heading down through the Suez Canal, going to some various locations. Currently it's India, but I think that might change a little bit. Then heading down towards Australia, and then the Circumnavigation of Australia, which you currently are selling, obviously, mainly to Australians. And what are the bookings like? Are they going well?
Well, it's quite remarkable after such a challenging year to have a product that's just sparked the interest of the market so strongly. And look, we were very wanting to be supportive of the whole product's itinerary range, and we will be in the future moving forward. In my discussions with Tradewind up front, I said, look, Australians are pretty challenged to travel in 2021, so there's not a big point in making a lot of noise about that. I mean, yes, the ship, look, there's already been, as you mentioned, some changes to the itineraries, and some of the things they're going to do in the Baltics have changed. But look, she will be launching with some fantastic voyages around the UK, mainly for UK residents. And coming through the maritime Silk Route, as you mentioned, through the United Arab Emirates, through albeit changed parts of India, and then down to Asia, and then to Australia. But look, we just thought it was a great way to launch the ships program here in Australia, when everybody's so sensitive about long haul travel and not quite knowing where the borders sit and like that in the future. So to start with her Australian itineraries seemed to be a good place. And to answer your original question, the market's response has been remarkable. I mean, I guess it's really good for Australia too, because we predicted when we first got involved in this that we might end up with 20 or 30% of the inventory for the Australian voyages, and the rest would come from overseas. But with all of the challenges that particularly the UK market and other European and American markets have had in travel, that's the last thing they're thinking of. So we've got a much bigger run on the ship now. And look, we've already got some sectors that are 50 and 60% sold. Really? So it's just, for a 2nd of November 2020 launch, it's been just a great outcome. And I think that's just a testament to how exciting the product is. The market conditions. We were 12 months away from launch, and then totally COVID refund policies, and guest funds are secure in a separate trustee account in the UK.
That's important.
Everything, every box was ticked, and the markets responded accordingly. I mean, the ship itself is pretty amazing. We haven't spoken a lot about what's on board. There's a range of cabins ranging from porthole double cabins through to deluxe balcony cabins, and even owners suites. The dining on board the ship is quite remarkable in terms of the variety. Again, taking a very sort of modern day approach to healthy dining, as well as the more traditional classic cuisine. A strong focus on regional produce and that type of thing wherever she is in the world. The most magnificent 2-level main dining room to provide for meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but also more casual dining at the Horizon Bar on deck. There's onboard activities that are tied in with that, with cooking demonstrations, wine tastings, and they will also link to onshore activities.
Oh, that's right.
Visiting local markets and wineries and things like that on the way. And then there's a team of people on board, both resident and visiting guest speakers, who are going to bring the destinations alive, and everything will be coordinated so that, like, shore excursions and onboard activities all link in with what the ship's doing. And so when it comes back to those itineraries, when the ship gets down here, I'll use Australia as an example, because I guess it's just more logical. So when the ship gets to the Asian regions, our main itinerary start from Bali, and basically she does Bali as a circumnavigation over 79 nights. But that's broken up into 5 main voyages. So there's Bali down to Cairns to Sydney, Sydney to Adelaide, Adelaide to Fremantle, and then back to Bali. But if I took one of the Sydney to Adelaide, say as an example, it's the most popular. Here we've got stops in places like Jarvis Bay, Bateman's Bay, Eden, Maria Island in Tasmania,
Lovely.
Hobart, Arthur, King Island, back up to Port Lincoln, Kangaroo Island, and then into Adelaide. I mean, these are itineraries that ships just don't normally do. And so I think the whole experience is, one of your questions earlier was what's their philosophy and how are they going to do things differently? And just based on an itinerary like that, you can hear and feel the way the thing's going to operate. And then you throw into that the magic of days at sea under sail. And I think this is something out of the box.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I mean, I think it's clear, though, that people shouldn't expect big stage shows, but they have resident pianists and all this sort of stuff. So it's very low key, it's very sort of calm. And it's the sort of thing that people who want to pay a little bit more money and get a unique experience actually want. They don't want all that razzmatazz. But, the other thing that struck me about Golden Horizon is the fact that it's all about fresh air. It's about being out there, and it's enjoying the sea and so on. And I do know from speaking with a couple of people, some of the visiting speakers and the resident destination speakers they've got for the Australian sectors. And as I say, the visiting speakers are among some of the top travel journalists in Australia, which is quite amazing to tell their stories. And I think that's a really important part of the mix. But one thing you did say, which I like very much indeed, is that cruise ship food is great, but it's a lot of food. I mean, you think a ship of 3,000 passengers, they're making 4 meals a day. This is 270 guests. This is fine dining every meal. So it's really the way to fly. And breakfast, lunch, dinner, selections of wines. What's the situation with wines? Some are included, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, all of the dining experiences are very comprehensive, and one of the really nice features that we find is that beer and wine is included with lunch and dinner. Like all ships that have inclusions, and there's always a premium list available if someone really wants to get fussing about wine. But there's good quality wines, and those will vary destination as well. So here in Australia, it'll be a field day for them because we've got, as you know, so many amazing wine districts. So when it's coming down the east coast, it might be presenting Hunter Valley wines, and then by the time it gets to Tasmania and Victoria, it might be Yarra Valley and Tamar Valley, and then into South Australia, and then right over to Western Australia with the Margaret River. So wines that'll be regionally linked to produce, and then all showcased on board. So as a product, it's nicely inclusive, but it's important to note that, like, for example, shore excursions aren't included, and the reason for that, and this comes from all of our years of experience. This style of traveller that doesn't like to be forced to do everything at the same time with a bunch of people. One of the reasons they're on small ships is to not be part of a mass tourist product. And so to be able to offer these immersive experiences on land, but to also allow people to do their own thing, I think is a really nice balance. But then the important things, and you mentioned that, you featured the guest speakers and some of the people that will be on board to share their experiences. That's why people travel on this style of product. We see whether we're taking people to Antarctica or the Arctic or the Amazon River or whatever it might be, or just beautiful coastal Australia. It's all about bringing that destination alive, taking away something, learning something. And look, as Australians, I hadn't done a lot of coastal Australian cruising except for the Kimberley up until about 2 years ago, and I did a voyage from Perth to Melbourne via all of the wonderful towns along the bottom of South Australia. And I came away, at 62 years of age and having done heaps of travel, and I learned so much about things that I didn't know because the speakers were great on the product. And I think that's why people that do our style of travel, they're very interested people. And I think so the programs that they've put together for Golden Horizon, I think it's just going to be.
Now, tell me, there is one downside to all this wonderful food. Whilst you've mentioned it's healthy, is there anything that you can do on board that might actually reduce the waistline a little bit? Just a touch, not too much.
I can't guarantee reduce, but at least neutralise it.
Yes.
But no, John, really good point, because for a ship like this, it's quite interesting that if you go back to the original France 2 back in 1913 or whatever it was, then things like this just weren't part of the deal. But to a ship like Golden Horizon in an era like this, then it has to be a comprehensive approach to travel. So there's a total wellness program on board, and that goes from a day spa, salon services, hairdressing services, etc. There's a full sauna, there's a Turkish steam bath, there's a full gymnasium, and then there's a host of more marine type activities. There's a drop-down swim platform on the vessel, I think you might have mentioned.
Yeah.
Earlier. And that gives access to swimming in the ocean, as well as the 3 swimming pools that are on board. There's a full-time scuba instructor on board to either help you with your current experience or to introduce you to diving. There's sailing dinghies, kayaks. It's quite amazing for a 162 metre vessel that takes over 207. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's even movies under the stars in the evening. Now, that's not going to help the waistline, but it's going to be one of those again. Can you imagine on a beautiful summer's night down here in Australia to be able to experience those sort of things? And not just here in Australia, all the other exotic places that
Now, we've talked a bit about Australia, quite a bit about Australia. So there's the Circumnavigation Australia, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. And it doesn't matter if somebody thinks they've been around Australia, done everything, it's going to be superb. Then after that, where does she go after that? And are you beginning to sell those programs now?
Yeah, absolutely. We've sort of looked at it that Australia was a great introduction, and then we know from our various products that we sell that we are getting interest now for 2022 and 2023 for the slightly longer haul markets. And so we can see the Australia, so after she finishes Fremantle up to Bali, she then goes on to do a pretty amazing circumnavigation of the Indian Ocean, which will involve, and this is another great thing, because there's visiting places like the Maldives and Madagascar. I mean, Madagascar can be an adventure on its own, and down to Tanzania, back up to Colombo, with lots of stops in between. But they're destinations that are really hard to go to on their own. So just together in such an amazing itinerary like that. Then she heads up to Japan, does some in-depth cruising around Japan. Perfect for a ship of this size. I've sailed in Japan on smaller vessels, and they can get into places that the big ones can't, which is one of those universal benefits of small ship cruising. She then heads across to Alaska, and then down to South America. And then that's about where she's up to in finalised itineraries at the moment. But then we're very close to launching, I think, mid to late April, the summer of 22-23 program for our summer, the Southern Hemisphere summer. And we'll be seeing her come across the Pacific through Easter Island and not mainstream stuff. Some really appropriate for golden type travel. And then Australia again, and followed by some amazing voyages around New Zealand. Not one circumnavigation of New Zealand, because their coastline doesn't really sort of work for that, but some, 2 or 3, I think it is, 10 to 14 day voyages in various beautiful parts of New Zealand, which will really lend itself to Australia. To sailing type voyages. And then we're not quite sure after that. But so we've got her to look for.
It's a lot of forward planning, though. There's, they're well advanced. Now, one of the when you mentioned when she leaves Australia, she goes around the Indian Ocean. And one of the great things there is she'll be visiting Christmas Island, which is this, I don't know if you've been there, it's amazing stones sticking out the ocean. And then Cocos Keeling Island, both of which are 4 or 5 hours flying time from Australia, but a part of Australia. And Cocos Keeling is, I can't remember how many, I think it's 30 coral atoll reefs. I've been there as well. Just absolutely incredible. And again, A, very expensive, B, very difficult to get to. So wonderful opportunities, it's quite incredible.
I mean, remote and exotic destinations, John, are just what small ships are all about. I mean, to be able to travel in comfort and luxury. I mean, again, I'm not sort of jumping back here, but with all of the romance of this amazing vessel, you've still got beautifully appointed cabins, modern. I mean, this is a brand new ship. It was launched in 2021. And so it doesn't matter how much romance and history is in her appearance, your day-to-day living is going to be unbelievably comfortable. And then to be able to get off at these remote and exotic places and be so in-depth immersed into the culture of the place, and then back on board that night or the next day or whenever for the the sailing and comfort experiences. It's a great combination. It applies to all these destinations that I touched on before. I mean, in Antarctica, your luxury ship's always going to be the best hotel in town. Going to the Kimberley here in Australia, again, beautiful wilderness, wilderness during the day, back at luxury at night. And so these places that you just mentioned on Tradewind's itinerary after Australia, the same thing will apply, in loads.
I've been on some small ships as well, very small ones, 100 guests, 100 crew, that sort of thing. And what I found about them was an amazing, not overly forced upon you in any sense, but an intimacy. So you actually got to know people because you were sitting down with them, having a drink at the bar, you were sitting down, relaxing with them, and maybe you say, oh, please join us for dinner, you know, and you'd meet them for dinner. It's very chilled, it's very relaxed. Now, no black tie evenings on board. It's very, very calm, very relaxed, you know, sort of atmosphere.
Absolutely. In fact, it's always interesting with the greatest respect to our British fellows. But you know, traditionally the UK is a much more formal society country than Australia. And one of the first things we always ask when we get involved in a new product is, what's the dress code? Because Australians, a rule of thumb, Australians, particularly in this more adventurous market, just don't want to wear a coat and tie. And so as soon as the unforced answer was casual on board, sure, you know, maybe smart casual in the evenings, but overall it's a very laid back product. And John, your point about, you know, the smaller number of guests, there's a couple of angles there that are just so important to me. And one is the smaller number of guests, so you get to know them, but also you get to know your crew.
Yes.
You know, on a 4,000 passenger ship with 2,500 crew, you can meet nobody, and certainly, you know, be lucky to bump into the same crew members day after day.
Yeah.
You know, this tends to be also, very importantly, a group of like-minded people. You know, you don't just go on a ship like this just for the sake of a holiday. You're going on there because something about the itinerary or the vessel or the style of travel has appealed to you. So you tend to end up with a group of like-minded people. So it's much easier to make friendships and to share those friendships. And so, yeah, I think the whole small group travel concept is really strong part of this whole product.
It's funny, a friend of mine describes small ship cruising as we tend to meet people like us. And it's funny, isn't it? He summed it up in one phrase. Well, Craig, that's amazing. What an incredible opportunity for Australians, and potentially New Zealanders as well, okay, to discover their own backyard from the ocean, and not only on a luxury cruise ship with only 270 guests, but also on the largest sailing cruise ship and 5-masted rigger in the world. I mean, when this ship turns up in places, people are going to be there looking at it. Now, the most important part is, where can people get information, both trade and consumer, including how do they contact you at Cruise Traveller?
Yeah, thanks, John. Look, our website's always a great starting point. That's www.cruisetraveller.com.au. There's 2 L's in Traveller, it's spelled the Australian way. Our best email contact is sales@cruisetraveller.com.au, and our toll-free inquiry line is 1-800-507-777. And look, we've got a team of people. I'm very proud of being able to maintain our whole team through the last 12 months. We find it very important to be able to still service our guest changes along the way in the last 12 months, but very important to be able to properly look after people for their inquiries on products like Tradewind. So look, you know, our team will love to hear from you anytime. This is one of the very few products that none of us have actually experienced firsthand so far, and for very obvious reasons. We normally invest in getting to wherever it is in the world to do it. But already we've got an intimate knowledge of the ship. We've been dealing with hundreds and hundreds of inquiries over the last 3 months. So, you know, that's enabled us to become very, very familiar with all aspects of the ship, and we just look forward to helping anyone that like to.
And I've got this funny feeling that Craig and most of his team, it won't be long before you'll be trying her. I've got this feeling. I don't know why I get this feeling, you know, but I've got this sort of feeling, you know. But look, Craig, thank you very much for your amazing insight into cruising on board Golden Horizon with Tradewind Voyages, and telling us about Cruise Traveller as well, which has been incredible. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, and I hope on board Golden Horizon. Thank you, Craig.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.